he's an extraordinary politician, extraordinarily gifted. So talking about him becoming Prime Minister might seem fanciful to some of your subscribers, some of the people watching us now, but I wouldn't rule Nigel Farage out from, being capable of anything, really.
They're not laughing now, are they? Nigel Farage has all the momentum in British politics. It's not going to be an easy road to number 10, but the unthinkable smashing of the UK's two-party system, which has created a uni-party dominated by big spenders, high taxes, and pro-mass migration globalists, well, it now seems within grasp. And the Westminster elite know it. So while they'll double down on their attacks, they're admitting for the first time that they are bloody terrified. Last night, Nigel won the Newcomer of the Year awards at the Spectator's annual Westminster Lovey Fest. He posted last night, "I told the Spectator Awards there would be hundreds of reform newcomers in Parliament before long. The look on Wes Streeting's face says it all." These people are usually all in it together, you know. I mean, I saw pictures last night of Beth Rigby gossiping with Angela Rayner. You get the drift. But Farage, the Westminster outsider, at least in the past, is now a serious threat to their deep state existence. As Matt Goodwin observed, people at the Spectator Awards used to laugh at Nigel Farage. "Last night, I sat in the room as he warned them reform will cause an earthquake at the next election. There was total silence because everybody knows it could happen." Now, perhaps the most hilarious reaction came from Emily Maitlis of the fake news agents. Her grammar was appalling, so maybe she'd quaffed a few too many of the free champers, but she wrote, "Nigel Farage wins Spectator Parliamentary Newcomer of the Year. He tells the crowd that the next election will be full of reform newcomers in their hundreds. He sits down to a silent, stunned room." And you know, Maitlis is a bit like the American lefty broadcasters who were so convinced that Kamala Harris was about to storm the White House because she lives in an alternate reality from ordinary people. And there was also stunned silence from the Conservative Party yesterday after the bombshell announcement that Tim Montgomerie, a Tories Tory and the founder of Conservative Home, a party member for over 30 years, was defecting to Reform UK. Some inside the Reform movement are even concerned the shock poaching could see the party move further to the centre. But for Nigel, what matters is proving that Reform are an electoral force that have a realistic chance of beating the Tories. And while he says he won't leave, Jacob Rees Mogg has become the first big beast to openly call for an arrangement between the two parties. Watch.
I'm a Tory to my toenails. I'm not going to change party. But the success of Reform is in having stolen the Tory party's clothes. That's the failure of the Tory party. As Kemi Badenoch has quite rightly said, we spoke right and governed left. And no wonder a lot of our voters deserted us. So 4 million off to Reform, 2.3 million stayed at home, who had been Conservative voters. And those people left us because we weren't actually doing what we said we would do. Look at the immigration figures.
But if they've stolen your clothes, is it not wise politically to think about, as Andrea Jenkin has done, think about your future, where the excitement is, where the momentum is, and look at a party like Reform? We've got Elon Musk. I wonder what you think about this. His very generous donation of $1 million to Nigel Farage, with the explicit ambition of making Nigel Farage the next UK Prime Minister.
Yeah, it's harder to do in this country than it is in the United States, because obviously with the presidential election you have one flag carrier, and here you need to win 325 seats, and Reform's a long way off that. I think there's a lot of overlap in the policies that Conservatives and Reform believe in. I think that Kemi Badenoch is quite capable of putting forward a strong Conservative message, which is what she is doing, and I think that will attract people back. But do I think there may need to be some accommodation between the Conservatives and Reform? Yes, I don't know what form it will take. It's too early to say. But in a first-past-the-post system, if one wing of politics is split, that wing of politics loses.
As we saw.
As we saw at the last election.
Yeah.
I think it's a bit more complicated than that, because I think a lot of people were voting to get rid of the Tories come what may at the last election. People were very fed up with this.
There is a tectonic shift happening on the right of British politics, and maybe, just maybe, it could save our United Kingdom. Now, Tim Montgomerie is here for the uncancelled interview. Tim, so great to speak to you. I was live yesterday when Reform UK made this announcement, and I have to say I was stunned. I was stunned because I know that you have been unhappy with Kemi Badenoch's leadership, but as I said in the digest, you're a Tories Tory. So I never thought you would actually leave for another party. Oh, just unmute yourself, Tim, so that we can hear you. There we go. We'll get it. Sorry, Tim. There we are.
Not only have I been in the Conservative Party for 36 years, I'm too old now to work the technology, Dan, but hopefully you can hear me now.
Can hear you loud and clear, so go ahead, Tim.
Yeah, no, I surprised myself really, but Dan, you've we've had conversations on and off over the last few years, and I think you'll have noticed that I've been on a bit of a journey myself. I've been restless and unhappy with the Conservative Party for some time. I think we clashed when you were in a previous incarnation over Boris Johnson. I felt he had stopped really being the kind of Conservative leader the country deserved. Immigration rose on his watch. He pursued all the net zero agenda, and on some of the values questions, tax, he was, off course in my view. And so it's been an accumulation for me of one misstep after another by the Conservative Party. I still feel I believe the same things as I did in 1988. When at a Tory party, 1989, I was at a Tory party conference and I was stood on chairs. There's probably camera footage of it somewhere, of me shouting 10 more years about Margaret Thatcher's time in office. I still believe in those things today that I believed in then. My question is, does the Conservative Party still believe in those things?
Would Thatcher have defected to Reform UK under these circumstances?
Yeah, you're not the first person to ask me that question. And I don't know, but I think she would have certainly fought very hard inside the Conservative Party to try and change it. And, joining another party, leaving the Conservative Party would have been a last resort for her, as it has been for me. I have thought on many previous occasions, potentially, whether I should leave the Conservative Party. And it was only really following last Thursday's immigration statistics, which were, to think, Dan, that nearly 1 million people net came into our country in one single year. An extraordinary statistic. Britain is being changed by a level of immigration that the British people never consented to. And for me, that happened under the Conservative Party. They could have done something about it. This was legal migration. It's not about, even about the boats crossing the channel illegally. This was legal migration, which the Conservative Party could have controlled, and they didn't. So who knows what Mrs. Thatcher would have done in response to that kind of change. But it was that kind of Conservative Party failure that led me to take the difficult decision that I did yesterday.
On a practical basis, do you think Nigel Farage can become Prime Minister?
Yeah, I do, actually. It's a long way off. But have you read Michael Crick's biography of Nigel Farage?
No.
Dan? No. Michael Crick is not. That was a very definite no.
I'm not a fan of Mr. Crick. I'm not a fan of Mr. Crick or his journalism. So no, I have not. Nigel claims he hasn't read it either, but enlighten me.
He doesn't have your politics. He doesn't have my politics. But his biography of Nigel Farage, I think, is very interesting. precisely because he comes from a perspective that's different from ours. And he said, of all the politicians he's sort of seen over the years, Nigel Farage's combination of being able to lead a political party, to be able to perform on television, in pub environments, on the street with people, to be able to, the perseverance he's had to stick to a cause, to put a cause like Brexit on the national agenda when no one else was talking about it. He's an extraordinary politician, extraordinarily gifted. So talking about him becoming Prime Minister might seem fanciful to some of your subscribers, some of the people watching us now, but I wouldn't rule Nigel Farage out from being capable of anything, really.
What about this concern within Reform UK that it's becoming a bit like Tory light, and that people like you might drag Reform UK to the centre? There's already been question marks over the fact that Nigel has ruled out mass deportations, has said that he's not worried about the change in demography in the UK.
Yeah, well, I'm sure some people will worry. Someone yesterday described me as a wet liberal Tory. I think that's the first time I've been called a wet liberal Tory, given some of my views. But there are certainly issues where I don't agree with Nigel Farage. And yesterday I had my £25 in my hand and I handed it over to Nigel and I said, before you accept this money, Nigel, are you sure you want me? Because, I've been an irritant to the Conservative Party over the years. And perhaps I'm going to be an irritant to Reform now. And there are things like I support the overseas aid budget. So there are areas of policy where I'm not going to be signed up to Reform. But I'm never going to stand as a Reform candidate. I just fundamentally, on the core stuff that Reform stands for, control of immigration, keeping the tax burden down, sensible policies on net zero, I stand with Nigel Farage and the rest of the parliamentary leadership on those issues. And Dan, if Reform are going to go from 5 MPs to 35 to 105 to 205, they're going to have to reach a broader number of people than they do at the moment. What are the opinion polls saying? They've got about 20% support at the moment. If they were to come close to replacing the Conservative Party as the party of the opposition, they certainly need to be 30, 35%. If they were to come close to replacing the Labour Party as the party of government, they certainly need to be aiming closer to 40% of support. So, it can't remain a sect. It can't remain, can't be a sect. It can't be a party that only appeals to a narrow group of people.
Are Robert Jenrick and Suella Braverman going to end up joining you, defecting?
Well, I have no knowledge about that at all. There are certain people, including Rob, who I told I was defecting to the day before, just out of courtesy. I don't have any relationship with Kemi Badenoch, so didn't forewarn her. But I told people like Robert Jenrick that I was leaving, and he said he understood why I was taking the decision that I did. But everyone has to speak for themselves. I'm not doing this as part of a group of people. This is very much me acting alone. I'm certainly going to be recording a video tomorrow addressed to my fellow Conservative, previous old habits die hard, my previous fellow Conservatives, urging them to sort of follow the path that I've pursued over the last 24 hours. But no, I'm acting entirely independently on my own, not part of some sort of concerted set of defections.
Okay, I want to get your reaction to a couple of big moments over the past few days. Firstly, want to check if you still stand by this tweet, Tim, because Matt Goodwin is a big part of the Reform UK movement, beloved by a lot of Reform supporters. Now, you say here there really is something sulphurous about Matt Goodwin, incendiary views, suspect opinion polls, massive self-obsession. British public life would be so much better without him.
I do stand by that, I'm afraid, Dan. I used to work with Matt in the past. We sort of crossed over at the Legatum Institute. But I've challenged him publicly about some of the opinion polling he's produced. And I stand by those remarks. And I know my concerns about him are shared by some in the Reform leadership as well. But that's for them to speak about. I've gone public with my concern, and I regret it. Matt and I were quite close for a period. But one of the things I really do like about Nigel Farage is he's not everyone's cup of tea, but fundamentally he's a patriot. I think Nigel Farage will always do the right thing for the country. So at the 2019 election, when he could have won seats for reform, he chose to put the national interest first, getting Brexit over the line before any consideration of his personal advance. Let's just say, Dan, I don't particularly want to go on and on about Matt Goodwin, but I'm not entirely convinced some of the people in the reform movement have quite that same commitment to the national interest before personal interest.
Okay, and then there's also this conversation between David Aronovich and Alex Phillips, which I wanted to show you. So David said, knowing Monty as I think I do, his sojourn and reform won't last long. The Faragists will soon be espousing mass deportations, and Tim is a committed Christian. Alex Phillips responded, arguably Christians palpably feel the existential challenge faced as a result of sweeping cultural and demographic change far more than secularists could ever understand. Secularists could ever understand. What's your response?
Well, look, I think ultimately, if you came here illegally and you've gone through the processes of applying for asylum or whatever for a settled status and you're rejected, I think you should be open for being deported. I think if you don't come from a safe country, that's a different question. But I have no, in principle, objection to deportation, Dan. So David Aronovich is a friend. We clash a lot on politics, but if anyone is closer to understanding my views, it's certainly Alex rather than David.
Then there's this moment where Nigel Farage stormed out of an interview with Sly News this week. It's over this MSM obsession regarding James McMurdoch, the Reform UK MP who was convicted of a violent crime against his then girlfriend 20 years ago, which he has fully apologised for and spoken about being the biggest regret of his life. This is what happened when Sly pushed Farage on it. But first, we've been told our whole lives that wrinkle creams were the easiest way to look younger. Now one doctor says that's nothing but old news. According to Dr. John Lake, the world-renowned Beverly Hills beauty expert, most wrinkle fixes on the market are nothing but glorified moisturisers. He says they hardly make a dent on your appearance and some can even be harmful to your skin. Recently, Dr. Lake has focused his attention away from mainstream cosmetic practices. Why? So that he can pursue a revolutionary anti-aging breakthrough, one that some experts say could empty the wallets of the cosmetic industry. It's almost like Photoshop for your face, he explained. You may even be mad after seeing how easy it is to visibly erase your wrinkles from view. Sounds good, right? Well, his personal clients have dubbed his new do-it-yourself technique the age rewinder method because it can take years or even decades off your appearance in under 2 minutes. In light of this amazing breakthrough, Dr. Lake has released a step-by-step video to the public. It's free, it's uninterrupted, where he outlines exactly how to use this simple solution from home. If this helps even one person look younger or feel more confident, I'll be thrilled knowing I helped, Dr. Lake commented. The video's since gone viral. It was shared by users on Facebook, but now it's had 2.3 million views, and the comments and feedback are outstanding, with women reporting they look decades younger. One wrote, best results of anything I've used. I can't believe how well this works. I'll never stop using this. I don't understand how it works, but the results are great. Thank you. So you can find out more about this yourself right now. Go to bhmd1.com/outspoken or just click in the link in the description box below in our show notes. But I'll repeat the address now, www.bhmd1.com/outspoken. But there is one thing Dr. Lake asks from his viewers. If watching this video helps you look and feel younger than you have in years, then please share this video with your friends and loved ones. Together, we have the power to help as many women reclaim a youthful look as possible. So you can go and watch the video, bhmd1.com/outspoken, or click on the link in the description box below. But now, back to the show.
Involves being honest, though. Are you not concerned that he lied about what he did?
Did he? He wasn't vetted. He wasn't vetted. James Murdoch was one of those many candidates who wasn't vetted at all by the party. Look, I didn't know any of this when I took back over as leader.
So you said you're going to put in place the most vigorous vetting system in place now. Do you think James Murdoch would not go through this new vetting system?
You can have your fun at Sky News. We've got 100,000 members. I've got 1 million followers on TikTok. Dame Andrea Jenkins has just joined us. She's our candidate for Greater Lincolnshire. You've had your fun. I'm off for lunch. Thank you.
Now, I love that, Tim, but how did you feel?
Yeah, Nigel, when Nigel's had enough of an interviewer, he certainly makes it clear, doesn't he, Dan? Look, we've just been talking about Christian values in the previous question you put to me. I don't know Tim Murdoch at all. If he walked into this room now, I wouldn't recognise him. I think people who've made mistakes in the past deserve forgiveness. If they fess up to them and they move on, they certainly deserve, a second chance in life. If, though, something as horrible as kicking a woman on the floor is true, that is a level of offence that does cause me certainly to pause. And I think violence towards a woman of that kind, and you haven't really come to terms with it, that is a big deal for me. But as I say, I don't know James Murdoch at all, and I don't know whether I don't know his side of the story, so it's not something I would want to judge him on too closely.
Well, Sly News is on one in regards to this because they have also challenged Richard Tice, who has very strong feelings about this, having had a detailed conversation with James McMurdoch. But let's have a watch at this clash with Sophie Ridge.
He was 19, and I know that Nigel Farage has come out to say that look, the vetting wasn't what it should be, right? But, if you're here, you're saying you want to be taken seriously as a political party, then this is the kind of thing that matters, right? Because court documents obtained by the Times have recently shown he was jailed for kicking his girlfriend around 4 times, according to those court documents.
That I don't think is an accurate representation of what the documents do say, point number one. Point number two, we are a great Christian nation. Are you seriously saying that if someone makes a bad mistake in life, age 19, that there's no redemption, they are doomed as a sinner forever? No. The whole point of Christianity is a sense of, if you've done something wrong, you pay your price, and at the end of that sentence, whatever it is, then, in a sense, you've done your bit. You've served your punishment, whatever it is, and good luck. And isn't it actually the alternative, the opposite is true? Isn't it remarkable that an individual had a bad issue at a very young age, but has gone full circle? And doesn't it show, actually, to other young people, look, bad stuff can happen. You can make bad judgments. You can get things badly wrong. But many years later, actually, you can do really well. He had a great job and end up as a member of Parliament. I think that's a good thing.
OK, I absolutely understand the point you're making about redemption, right? People shouldn't be written off for life. But his statement before the Times piece said, we argued and I pushed her. She fell over and she was hurt. The court documents seen by the Times said that he kicked her. I mean, you can talk about redemption, but surely part of redemption is acknowledging what you did, being upfront about what you did, and only then can you move on and be truly sorry, right? I mean, it sounds like there is a pretty major discrepancy.
You can have a dispute about what actually happened. The bottom line is...
So what's he tell... Look, this is so important, OK? So what has James McMurdoch told you that happened?
Look, my understanding is different to what the Times have reported.
So what is your understanding?
It actually doesn't matter. I wasn't there. No, I'll tell you why it doesn't, because it comes back. The law is the law. The law ruled that he had transgressed, and he was punished. He served his punishment. And
but if you're asking people to vote for you, people have the right to know what you've done in the past,
but equally,
what you've been
hang on.
jailed for.
So what you're really saying is what you...
The issue that I have with this is that James McMurdoch is a backbench Reform UK MP. We have not seen any of this obsession from the mainstream media about the fact that Keir Starmer appointed to his cabinet a woman who he knew was convicted of fraud, a woman who, in my opinion, and she can feel free to come and sue me if she wants, but I've looked at all of the evidence, clearly lied about this missing mobile phone to the police, to her employers, to the party, and there isn't any form of hectoring of Labour MPs, and certainly not the Prime Minister, about that. Whereas it feels like any indiscretion will be used to beat the Reform UK party. Now, of course, that's not to excuse what James Murdoch did, but it was 20 years ago.
Well, look, Dan, I'm going to let you into a big secret now. No one else is with us, are they? We can just talk privately.
Nope, no one's here.
The mainstream media don't like reform. And you know what? The consequence of that, we can complain that that's unfair, and it is unfair. But I'm afraid what's going to happen, and this is going to happen over the next few years as well as the next few weeks and months, is the mainstream media are going to hit reform candidates harder than they will do for Labour and Conservatives. It's unfair, but what reform need to do, and I'm now part of this organisation, and I will do my bit in any way to help, is vetting of candidates needs to improve radically. And in that interview clip you saw, you just showed with Nigel Farage, he realises that. And it must be the case. If James Murdoch, I was mispronouncing his name a few minutes ago, for which apologies, but did he declare to reform that this issue had been in existence in the past? What the reform needs, because this scrutiny is going to come at it, fairly or unfairly, I think we both agreed unfairly, their candidates really do have to be whiter than white. And the Reform Party needs to know if there are any issues that Sky News or anyone else can get hold of in the future, they need to be upfront about them, because this has been the way the mainstream media have always attacked sort of centre-right parties. Rather than address the policy, because they know the British people are largely with us on the policy issues like immigration, they've tried to attack us personally and in ways like this. And I'm afraid on this occasion, there's at least some justification for that attack. And I'm afraid we need to raise our game because they aren't going to change. So we just need to be prepared for the attacks.
See, that's where I have a slightly different view, Tim, because I actually think don't play their games at all. I would like to see Nigel go full Trumpian, understand that the establishment, including the mainstream media, are going to do everything possible to destroy you, so you've got to try and destroy them. But I guess I'm in a different place in terms of that compared to where Reform is at the moment.
Well, I certainly think we fight fire with fire. We attack them. We attack the hypocrisy of people in the mainstream media. I'm not saying we just sort of lie down and take whatever they throw at us, but I think we need to be wise. Dan.
I know, but the problem is what that means is you're going to lose great people, Tim. And there are great people who I know were part of the reform movement, and you were going to lose them because they posted something on X a few years ago about attending a Tommy Robinson rally, or maybe made an inartful joke. And those people are my viewers, a lot of them. They are the people who Richard Tice dismissed as that lot. And I don't actually think Richard meant it, and I think he probably regrets it. But that's all I'm saying. I just think let's not immediately dismiss a whole load of people from this very important movement.
And Dan, I don't think we're as far apart as perhaps you sort of suggest just then, because I didn't say that when people have fessed up to things in their past that might be awkward, write them off. I didn't say that. I just said it's important that the reform leadership knows so that they can deal with it and make a judgment. I think the British people are forgiving. And if James Murdoch, and just, we don't know the full truth of it, so I'm trying to be careful what I say. But if there was this incident in his past, and he says to people, does an interview and says, what did George W. Bush famously said once? When I was young and irresponsible, I was young and irresponsible.
Yeah. Well, I've asked James on. I personally think he should speak about it. He should address it and then move on. I think that would be a really good thing for him to do.
The British people are forgiving, but it's when an issue is sort of held back, it's secret, then people sort of go, well, is it more serious than even we've been told? And so, get it out into the open. But if you're going to stand for reform, as if you're going to stand for a centre-right party, you need to tell the leadership of the party what potentially snares there are, and then the leadership can say, yeah, this guy made a mistake, this person made a mistake, but they're still on side, and I still want them as a candidate.
Well, Tim, look, you are a wise head. Reform UK are very lucky to have you, and goodness me, it's going to be an interesting few years, and I look forward to having you back on
Congratulations on all you're
Outspoken.
doing with your show, Dan. You had your own reverse, a couple of years ago now, isn't it? And you've come back, and it's
I guess
great
that's why I really feel for people like for people like James, what he's going through. I know what it's like when there is a campaign of destruction, and it's usually the mainstream media that are driving that campaign of destruction for their own reasons. And I actually think, I'm not just talking about myself, there's a whole load of great people in the independent media, but I think the independent media will be very, very critical for Reform UK over the next few years, as we saw in the US, the independent media being very critical for the election of Donald Trump, because people will get the truth from the independent media in a way they just won't from the mainstream media now.
Yeah, I completely agree with that.
Tim Montgomerie, so great to have you. Congratulations. Thank you so much for watching Dan Wootton Outspoken. Please click on my face just to the bottom left to subscribe to this brand new independent news source and turn on the notification bell so you'll be alerted to our brand new live shows, uncancelled interviews, and special royal episodes. Outspoken is also now available as a podcast, so you can listen to the show every weekday on the go, wherever you are.